Everyone walked past the tired woman sitting alone in the corner of the cafe, but one poor girl stopped and asked the question nobody else did, "Are you okay?" On a rainy afternoon in downtown Chicago, Maya Collins was finishing another long shift at the small cafe where she worked. The warm lights inside the shop reflected against the windows as the city moved quickly outside. Customers came and went, conversations filled the room, and everyone seemed focused on their own lives. Everyone except the older woman sitting quietly near the window. She looked exhausted, holding a simple handbag and staring at a cup of coffee that had already gone cold. To most people, she was just another stranger having a difficult day. But Maya noticed the small details others ignored. She noticed the way the woman's hands trembled slightly as she reached for her cup. She noticed the sadness behind her polite smile. Maya did not know the woman's name. She did not know her background. She did not know that this quiet customer belonged to one of the most powerful families in the city. She only knew that someone needed kindness. Maya approached the table with a gentle smile and asked if she needed anything. The woman looked surprised because she was not used to being noticed without people wanting something from her. Maya offered her a fresh cup of coffee, a warm meal from the kitchen, and a little conversation while she waited. It was not a grand gesture. It was not something that would appear in the news. It was simply one person choosing to care about another. The woman introduced herself only as Eleanor and thanked Maya for her kindness. During their conversation, Maya never asked questions about money, status, or family. She never tried to discover who Eleanor was. She treated her like anyone else who walked through the cafe doors. That simple act meant more than Maya could imagine. Because Eleanor Hayes was not just an elderly woman having a quiet afternoon. She was the mother of Adrian Hayes, a Korean Mafia boss known throughout the city for his influence and powerful reputation. Adrian had spent years surrounded by people who respected his family name, but very few people who showed genuine kindness without expecting anything in return. When Eleanor returned home that evening, she carried something more valuable than the comfort of a warm meal. She carried the memory of a young woman who helped her without knowing who she was. Meanwhile, Maya returned to her small apartment, prepared for another ordinary day, completely unaware that her simple kindness had reached someone far beyond her world. She believed she had only helped a lonely stranger in a cafe. She had no idea that by morning, her life would change forever. As the city slept, four silent figures prepared to visit the cafe where Maya worked. They were not coming because she had done something wrong. They were coming because one powerful family had discovered something rare. A person who offered kindness without asking for anything in return. And Maya was about to learn that even the smallest act of compassion could travel much farther than she ever imagined. The next morning, Maya Collins arrived at the cafe expecting nothing more than another ordinary shift. The rain from the previous day had disappeared, leaving the streets of Chicago covered in soft morning light. She unlocked the front door, turned on the warm lights, and began preparing the tables just as she always did. She had no idea that before the day ended, everyone around her would be talking about the moment when four men in black suits walked through those same doors. The cafe was busy with its usual rhythm. Customers were ordering coffee, employees were moving between tables, and Maya was quietly focused on her work. Then the atmosphere changed. Four men entered together, dressed professionally, carrying themselves with calm confidence. Conversations became quieter. People looked up from their cups, wondering who they were and why they had come. Maya stood behind the counter, unsure why they were there. She searched her memory, trying to understand if she had somehow made a mistake. But then the man standing in front stepped forward and politely asked, "Are you Maya Collins?" Hart paused for a moment. She nodded carefully. The man lowered his head slightly and said they had come on behalf of Eleanor. Yes. The name immediately brought back the memory of the woman from the cafe the day before. Maya expected a complaint or some misunderstanding, but instead, the words that followed completely surprised her. They had not come to question her. They had come to thank her. The four men explained that Eleanor had told her family about the young woman who showed her kindness when she needed it most. Maya listened quietly, almost unable to believe that such a small action had created such a reaction. She told them she had only done what anyone should do when they see someone struggling. But the men looked at her differently. They had spent years protecting a powerful family, and they had seen countless people approach them with hidden intentions. Maya was different. She had helped Eleanor without knowing her identity. She had offered kindness without expecting a reward. Across the city, Adrian Hayes listened as his mother described the cafe worker who had treated her like a person instead of a name. Adrian was a man known for his influence, discipline, and carefully controlled word. He was surrounded by people who wanted something from him, and trust was something he rarely gave easily. But his mother's words stayed in his mind. She did not care who I was, Eleanor told him. She cared that I was alone. For Adrian, those words were difficult to ignore. He had spent his life understanding power, but he rarely saw genuine compassion without a purpose behind it. Meanwhile, Maya politely thanked the men and returned to her work, still believing the moment would eventually pass. She did not ask for money. She did not request favors. She simply continued serving coffee with the same kindness she had shown the day before. But somewhere across the city, a powerful man had begun asking questions about the cafe girl who had given his mother something that wealth could never provide. And for the first time in years, Adrian Hayes was curious about someone who wanted nothing from him. Adrian Hayes had built his entire life around understanding people, but the young woman from the cafe was the first person in years who left him without an answer. From the moment his mother mentioned Maya Collins, he found himself thinking about a simple question. What kind of person helps someone without knowing their name, their influence, or their position in life? That question stayed with him long after the conversation ended. In Adrian's word, every action usually had a reason. People approached him because they wanted opportunities, protection, or connections. Kindness without expectation was something he rarely witnessed. But Maya had done exactly that for his mother. She had no idea who Eleanor Hayes was, yet she treated her with patience and respect. The next afternoon, Adrian decided to visit the cafe himself. He did not arrive with a large group or announce his presence. He wanted to see the place where such a simple moment had happened. The cafe looked ordinary from the outside, with small tables near the windows and the familiar sound of coffee machines filling the room. But to Adrian, it felt different. It was a place where someone had shown his mother something his wealth could not provide. Maya was behind the counter when he entered. She noticed him immediately, not because she knew his reputation, but because he carried a quiet confidence that made him stand out. Adrian introduced himself calmly. Maya recognized the name but did not react the way most people did. She did not become nervous. She did not try to impress him. She simply welcomed him as another customer. That surprised him more than he expected. Adrian asked about Eleanor and thanked Maya for helping her. Maya smiled and said she was glad the woman was doing better. She explained that she had not done anything special, she had only seen someone who needed kindness. Adrian listened carefully. He was used to people explaining their achievements and trying to prove their value. Maya did the opposite. She minimized her own kindness because, to her, helping someone was simply the right thing to do. During their conversation, Adrian noticed details that others might have missed. The way Maya remembered every customer's usual order. The way she thanked her co-workers. The way she treated everyone with the same respect regardless of their appearance or status. These small moments revealed more about her character than any introduction could. Before leaving, Adrian offered to show his appreciation, but Maya politely declined anything excessive. She told him that knowing Eleanor was safe was enough. Those words followed him as he walked back into the city. For someone who had spent years surrounded by people chasing wealth and recognition, meeting someone who wanted nothing from him felt unfamiliar. That evening, Adrian sat in his office overlooking the city lights. The documents on his desk remained untouched as he thought about the cafe worker who had changed the way he viewed a simple act of kindness. Maya Collins was not powerful because of money. She was not respected because of a title. She carried something much harder to find. Genuine character. And for the first time in a long time, Adrian Hayes wanted to understand a person, not because of what they could offer him, but because of what they had already given to the world. The moment Adrian Hayes walked out of the cafe, he expected the feeling of curiosity to disappear. He believed it was only a brief encounter with someone who had reminded him of a value he had forgotten. But days passed, and the memory of Maya Collins continued to return. It was not because she was connected to his family. It was not because his mother appreciated her kindness. It was because Maya had shown him something he could not easily explain. She treated everyone with the same respect, whether they had influence or nothing at all. For Adrian, that was unusual. In his world, appearances often determined how people were treated. A person's name, position, or wealth usually opened doors. But Maya had opened a door for his mother simply because she saw another human being who needed help. Meanwhile, Maya continued living her normal routine. She arrived at the cafe before sunrise, prepared tables, served customers, and handled long hours with a quiet determination. She never expected anything from the Hayes family. She never told anyone about the visit from the 4 bodyguards. To her, it was simply a moment where she helped someone, and then life moved forward. But Adrian's mother saw things differently. Eleanor Hayes had spent many years surrounded by people who knew her family name. She knew the difference between kindness given for attention and kindness given from the heart. She understood that Maya's actions came from a place of genuine compassion. One evening, Eleanor spoke honestly with Adrian. She told him that the young woman reminded her of a time when people valued each other before everything became about status and success. Adrian listened quietly. He had always respected his mother's judgment, but this time her words reached him differently. He began to wonder how many people like Maya existed in the world, people who carried struggles silently but still chose to be kind. The following week, Adrian returned to the cafe. This time, he stayed longer. He watched the way Maya interacted with everyone around her. He noticed that she remembered small details about customers, encouraged co-workers during difficult moments, and remained patient even when the day became exhausting. None of these things were dramatic. There were no grand speeches or public recognition. They were simple choices repeated every day. Yet those choices revealed more strength than Adrian had expected. A person in Maya's position could easily have become bitter, but she had chosen something different. She had chosen kindness without expecting the world to reward her. Adrian began to realize that power was not always about controlling situations. Sometimes, true strength came from having every reason to become cold but choosing to remain warm instead. That realization stayed with him. For the first time in years, Adrian was not interested in what someone could provide for him or his family. He was interested in understanding someone who had already given something valuable without even knowing it. And while Maya continued making coffee behind the small counter, unaware of the thoughts she had inspired, the most powerful man in the city was beginning to see the world through a completely different perspective. Adrian Hayes had spent years believing that every problem had a solution if he had enough resources, enough influence, or enough information. But the more he learned about Maya Collins, the more he realized that some things could not be solved with money. They had to be understood. One quiet afternoon, Adrian returned to the cafe with a different purpose. He was no longer there simply because his mother had asked him to show appreciation. He wanted to see the person behind the kindness that had left such a strong impression on his family. Maya greeted him politely, just as she would any other customer. She did not act nervous because of his reputation, and she did not try to create a connection with him because of his position. That honesty continued to surprise him. Adrian ordered a coffee and sat near the window, watching the ordinary moments that most people ignored. He saw Maya help an elderly customer carry a bag to the door. He saw her comfort a new employee who was struggling during a busy hour. He saw her quietly fix small problems without expecting anyone to notice. To Adrian, those moments revealed more than any background check ever could. Later that day, he offered Maya a way to make her life easier. He explained that his family wanted to show their gratitude and that they could provide financial support if she needed it. He expected her to accept. Most people in his world would have. But Maya gently shook her head. She thanked him sincerely but told him that she did not help Eleanor because she wanted a reward. She helped because someone needed kindness at that moment. Adrian remained silent. He had heard many people talk about values, but he rarely saw someone live by them so naturally. Maya was not rejecting his generosity out of pride. She was simply protecting the meaning behind her actions. She did not want a good deed to become a transaction. That simple response stayed with Adrian long after he left the cafe. In his life, almost everything had become connected to negotiation. Favors created expectations. Gifts created obligations. Relationships often came with hidden reasons. But Maya had reminded him that some actions were valuable precisely because they were given freely. When Adrian returned home, Eleanor noticed the change in his expression. She asked what he had learned from the cafe girl who had helped her. Adrian looked out at the city lights and admitted that he had spent years surrounded by people who wanted something from him. Maya was different because she had nothing to gain. She had shown him respect without knowing his power, kindness without knowing his name, and compassion without expecting anything in return. Eleanor smiled because she understood what her son was beginning to realize. The greatest lesson was not about Maya helping a powerful family. It was about a powerful man finally learning to recognize the value of a person who had never needed power to be important. And for Adrian Hayes, that realization was only the beginning of a transformation he never expected. Adrian Hayes had always believed that people revealed themselves through what they wanted, but Maya Collins continued to challenge everything he thought he understood. The more time passed, the clearer it became that her kindness was not a moment of emotion. It was a way of living. While Adrian's world was built around reputation, responsibility, and careful decisions, Maya's world was built around patience, compassion, and the belief that every person deserved respect. That difference was exactly what made him pay attention. One evening, Adrian invited his mother Eleanor to visit the cafe again. He wanted to see the place where a simple conversation had created such a meaningful change in his family. When Eleanor entered, Maya immediately recognized her and welcomed her with the same warmth as before. There was no special treatment because of her connection to Adrian. There was only genuine care. Adrian watched quietly from a distance and noticed something important. Maya never changed the way she treated people based on who they were. She gave the same kindness to every customer, whether they were successful professionals, busy workers, or someone simply looking for a quiet place to rest. That consistency made Adrian understand that her character was not something she displayed for attention. It was who she truly was. However, not everyone around Adrian understood why he respected Maya. Some people in his circle questioned why a powerful man would spend time with Simeone, who worked at a small cafe. They saw her position before they saw her personality. They measured her by her circumstances instead of her character. Adrian noticed those judgments, but for the first time, he did not ignore them. He understood because he had once looked at the world the same way. He had once believed that success and influence were the clearest signs of value. Maya had shown him another perspective. She had strength without needing control. She had confidence without needing recognition. She had dignity without needing approval from anyone. Meanwhile, Maya continued her daily life without realizing how much she had influenced Adrian. She never tried to change him. She never gave him advice or demanded that he become someone different. She simply lived according to her own values, and that example spoke louder than words ever could. One afternoon, Adrian returned to the cafe after a difficult day. For the first time, he did not come looking for answers or information. It came because the quiet atmosphere reminded him that there were still places in the world where people cared about each other without hidden intentions. Maya noticed that something seemed different about him. The confidence was still there, but the distance had softened. Adrian thanked her, not for helping his mother, but for reminding him of something he had forgotten. He thanked her for showing him that respect was not created by power. It was earned through actions. As the evening light filled the cafe, Adrian realized that Maya had never needed his family's recognition to prove her worth. She had carried that worth with her from the beginning. And the man who once believed he understood the value of everything was finally learning the value of something that could never be measured. Adrian Hayes had spent his entire life surrounded by people who understood power, but he was beginning to discover that power alone could not create the kind of connection he had found with Maya Collins. The more he learned about her, the more he realized that her kindness was not something created by comfort or an easy life. It came from experience, from challenges she had faced quietly, and from a decision she made every day to remain compassionate. One morning, Adrian arrived at the cafe earlier than usual. The streets were still quiet, and the soft morning light reflected through the windows. Maya was already there, preparing the space before customers arrived. She moved through her routine with the same calm focus she always had, never realizing that someone with far more influence than anyone around her was watching with genuine respect. Adrian noticed the small details that others overlooked. He noticed how Maya remembered the names of regular customers. He noticed how she made new employees feel welcome. He noticed how she handled difficult moments with patience instead of frustration. These were not dramatic acts that would attract attention, but they revealed the kind of person she was. Later that day, Adrian's family gathered for a conversation about Eleanor's experience. Some members of the family still struggled to understand why Maya mattered so much. They believed gratitude should be expressed through a generous gift and then the matter should be finished. But Eleanor disagreed. She explained that Maya had given something far more meaningful than assistance. She had given a moment of humanity when it was needed most. Adrian listened carefully. He realized that his family had spent years protecting their reputation, but Maya had protected something more important, the dignity of another person. That realization stayed with him. For years, Adrian had believed that being respected meant being feared or admired. Now he understood that true respect came from the way a person treated others when there was nothing to gain. Meanwhile, Maya continued facing her own challenges. She worked long hours, managed responsibilities outside the cafe, and continued building a life through determination. She never expected Adrian or his family to change her circumstances. She never saw herself as someone who needed to be rescued. That was one of the reasons Adrian admired her. She did not want to become part of his world. She simply wanted to be valued as herself. One evening, Adrian and Maya had a quiet conversation after the cafe closed. He thanked her again, but this time his words carried a different meaning. He was not thanking her because she helped his mother. He was thanking her because she reminded him of the person he wanted to become. Maya smiled and told him that everyone had the ability to choose kindness, no matter their position in life. Those words stayed with Adrian long after he left. The powerful man who once measured success through influence and achievement was learning a different definition of strength. It was not about having the most control. It was about having the courage to recognize goodness in others. And as the connection between two completely different worlds grew stronger, Adrian began to understand that the greatest changes often begin with the smallest acts of kindness. The relationship between Adrian Hayes and Maya Collins had reached a point neither of them expected. What began as a simple act of kindness in a small cafe had slowly become a lesson that changed the way Adrian viewed the world around him. For years, he had lived with the belief that responsibility meant carrying every burden alone and that trust was something earned only through loyalty and achievement. But Maya had shown him a different kind of strength, one that came from compassion rather than control. As the weeks passed, Adrian started making choices differently. People around him noticed that he listened more carefully during conversations and considered the feelings of others before making decisions. These changes were subtle, but they were real. He was still the same powerful man with a demanding role, but something inside him had shifted. He no longer measured every interaction by what someone could provide. One afternoon, Adrian invited Maya and Eleanor to a quiet family gathering. Maya was hesitant at first because she did not feel like she belonged in a world surrounded by wealth and influence. She worried that people would see her only as an outsider. But Eleanor welcomed her warmly and reminded her that kindness had a place everywhere, regardless of Simeone's background. When Maya entered the room, some family members looked surprised. They had heard stories about the cafe worker who helped Eleanor, but they had not expected someone so humble and genuine. Maya did not try to impress anyone. She simply spoke honestly, shared her experiences, and treated everyone with the same respect she always had. Adrian watched as the room slowly changed. People who once focused on her circumstances began noticing her character. They saw the patience in her words and the sincerity in her actions. They realized that Maya had given their family something that money and status could not create. She had reminded them of the importance of seeing people as individuals. Later that evening, Adrian spoke privately with Maya. He admitted that when he first heard about her, he expected someone who wanted recognition or an opportunity. Instead, he found someone who was content knowing she had done the right thing. Maya told him that kindness was not powerful because it changed someone's situation instantly. It was powerful because it reminded people that they mattered. Those words stayed with Adrian. He understood that his life had been focused on protecting what he had built, but Maya had shown him the importance of building something within himself. Respect, patience, and understanding had become more valuable to him than admiration. Meanwhile, Maya remained the same person she had always been. She continued working at the cafe, helping others, and living with a quiet confidence. She never asked Adrian to change his world for her. She simply showed him a better way to see it, and as the distance between their two worlds continued to disappear, Adrian finally understood that the greatest influence did not always come from those with the most power. Sometimes, it came from the person who chose kindness when nobody was watching. The city had changed around Adrian Hayes, but the greatest change happened within him. Months earlier, he had walked into a small cafe searching for answers about his mother's unexpected connection with a young woman named Maya Collins. He had expected to find a simple explanation, but instead, he found a lesson that transformed the way he understood people. The powerful man who once believed everything could be measured by influence, wealth, or reputation had learned that the most meaningful things in life were often the ones that could never be purchased. Maya continued working at the cafe, living the same humble life she had always lived. She still arrived early, greeted customers with a smile, and offered kindness even on difficult days. She never changed because of Adrian's attention. She never allowed his position to define her. That was exactly why he respected her. One morning, Adrian returned to the cafe with Eleanor. The familiar place looked the same as the day their story began. The same tables stood near the windows. The same sounds filled the room. But the meaning of the place had completely changed. What was once an ordinary cafe had become the place where Adrian learned his most important lesson. As Eleanor sat with Maya, she thanked her again for the kindness she had shown when she needed it. Maya smiled and said that she was simply happy to know Eleanor was doing well. She still believed her actions were nothing extraordinary. But Adrian understood the truth. Sometimes the smallest choices revealed the greatest character. Over time, people around Adrian noticed the difference in him. He became more patient with those who worked beside him. He listened before making decisions. He began recognizing the efforts of people who were often overlooked. His world did not become smaller because he became kinder. Instead, it became more meaningful. He discovered that respect built through understanding was far stronger than respect created through fear or status. Maya never tried to change Adrian. She never demanded that he become someone else. She simply showed him, through her actions, that a person's true strength came from how they treated others when there was nothing to gain. The old Adrian would have considered that an unusual idea. The new Adrian considered it one of the most valuable lessons he had ever received. One evening, as the lights of the city reflected across the cafe windows, Adrian looked back at the journey that had started with a simple act of kindness. A woman who had very little had given something priceless to a family that seemed to have everything. She had reminded them that compassion was not weakness, humility was not a lack of power, and a person's worth was never determined by their circumstances. Maya remained the same cafe worker who had helped a stranger on a rainy afternoon. Adrian remained a powerful man with great responsibilities. But they both understood something they had not known before. A single moment of kindness could cross any boundary, connect any two worlds, and change the heart of someone who thought they had already learned everything. And that day, everyone who knew their story remembered that true value was never found in what someone owned, but in what they were willing to give.